Hello, my name is Vivian, and in this video, I will be reflecting on the Art History 115 course, Modern and Contemporary Art of Latin America. What have you learned? In Unit 1, I learned about the basic definition of utopia, which is essentially starting anew. It is about starting with a clean slate, and achieving utopia is working towards something that is not the status quo, or rather something that is aspired to be. My ability to conduct formal and contextual analysis of works also feels like it has been strengthened from this class. Going over certain works in class has helped me unlock themes I missed. It also helped me notice patterns in works that I did not see beforehand. For example, from Unit 2 in Diego Rivera's The Creation made using encaustic fresco, we discussed how he used earthly materials like sand so that it would be quote-unquote baked into the wall during the process of making this piece. This, I thought, was a very important detail to have been discussed about, because I would have never known this, and it really showed me how much he wanted to display the indigenous history of Mexico, both through contextual details as well as his materials in making this piece. Furthermore, I feel like I learned a lot about the common features in art/architecture during both the discussion of utopia in Brazil as well as in Mexico City. What I mean by this is that, for example, in Brazil, their architecture during the utopian experiments, we saw a lot of photos in class of the construction and plans they had made for the buildings, and they all had this very modern, clean, and minimalistic feeling to all of them. And for in Mexico, during the utopian era, many of the murals depicted a lot of labor, workers, and overall many symbols that would be recognizable no matter your education. What have you found interesting or surprising? In Unit 1, we went over how the modernization or the utopianization of Brazil was actually not this seamless transition into utopia, but rather there were a lot of casualties, people dying in poverty and poor living conditions. And it was very insightful to learn that when country is undergoing a utopian transformation, most of the time there is something that is funding this, or like putting in the work and effort to make it possible. There is someone who will be paying the price to transform up this place into something new. So this has definitely taught me to be more skeptical of similar events in history that might have seemed like this great big thing in our textbooks, but in reality, you have to look deeper into how things were actually like. For example, here is a photograph taken by Marcel Gauthieron in Sacolandia in 1958. It depicts people using cement stacks as shelter during the construction. Which concepts or ideas have challenged you? This course has definitely taught me how to have a more open idea of things. My idea of cultures and countries like Brazil and Mexico have been challenged. We learned in class that even though some ideas are borrowed or inspired from other places to be incorporated into their own culture and adapt, it is not considered stealing, and it is still considered their own culture because they are incorporating their own things into it and adapting it and making it their own. Which artists and artworks, even those who briefly mentioned in class, would you like to dig into more deeply, and why? An artist and their work that I would like to dig more deeply into is Zul Salar. We talked about him and Emilio Petrucci being friends and their history and how that might have affected their work, as well as went over details showing what he liked working with and what kind of old art he did compared to his newer ones. One particular piece that stood out to me was Mundo in 1925, made with watercolor. I really enjoyed deciphering the ideas that he was trying to convey in this piece, as well as any information he was trying to hint to the viewer, and I would like to do that with more of his other pieces as well. What connections have you made between the material in this class and another college course you've taken or are currently taking? I have taken another art history course before, which was Art History 023, Introduction to American Art, and the overall layout and way of learning is very similar to this college course. Both in that class and this class, our focus was on learning how to do formal and contextual analysis of works, as well as having a gallery of works in your head during the time period. We had to memorize works as well as what idea they were trying to convey, as well as the artist. We analyzed patterns in the works during the time, as well as the important details in them and why they might have been put in there. As the art history courses, we are expected to learn how to write papers and reflect a lot on what we are seeing and reading about. And lastly, both courses involved reading texts or taking notes, to which has both taught me how to go over readings in a more efficient way rather than reading word for word on all the texts.